Today, I'm going to explain the movie The Revenant, released in 2015. The film takes place in the year 1823 and opens with Captain Henry's group of hunters as they travel through the forest. One day as their guide, Hugh Glass, and his son Hawk are out hunting, the camp is ambushed by the people of the Arikara tribe who are searching for their chief's abducted daughter, Pogowa. The ensuing battle results in multiple deaths while everyone else is forced to flee the camp to save their lives. Glass tries to lead them to safety, but Fitzgerald argues with him over his motives as he believes Glass doesn't care about them and is only trying to save his son. Their argument is interrupted by Captain Henry, who, unlike Fitzgerald, has complete faith in Glass and thinks they need to concentrate on their escape plan instead of fighting amongst themselves. Hawk is upset by the situation, but Glass assures him that he will take care of him on the journey as he's his only remaining family after the death of his wife. The next morning, the group abandons their only boat upon Glass's suggestion, as he thinks moving by the river will make them more vulnerable to attacks. After arriving at the riverbank, they begin stashing the pelts under Henry's command. Fitzgerald initially objects to his decision because it's his only way of making a living, but Henry forces him to comply. As the group settles in for the night, Glass makes a quick visit to the forest alone, where he is brutally attacked by a bear. After hearing the gunshot, Henry and his men race to the rescue, but find him near death as he's being crushed under the bear's body after killing it. As they treat his wounds, Henry orders the group to secure the area as he fears their indigenous attackers might have been alerted to their presence by the gunshot. But luckily, they remain safe for the evening. After securing the area, the group discusses their plan of moving to Fort Kiowa, while Hawk comforts his father, who seems to be barely alive. The next morning, they continue on their journey while carrying Glass in the intensely cold weather, but some members begin to complain that he's slowing them down. Upon hearing this, Fitzgerald suggests a mercy killing to put Glass out of his misery. Despite Hawk's protest, Henry agrees, but cannot bring himself to pull the trigger. Instead, he announces a cash reward for the members who take care of Glass, while the rest are assigned to go and find a way to the fort. As Hawk and another member of the party, Bridger, stay with Glass, Fitzgerald decides to join as well, thinking the money can make up for the losses he faced after abandoning the pelts. Henry accepts this decision and advises him to properly bury Glass if he happens to die on the journey. After the group leaves with Henry, Hawk tries to keep Glass distracted by talking to him. Meanwhile, Glass flashes back to how their village had been ambushed by the intruders who burnt the entire place. His wife was killed in the attack, while he and a severely injured Hawk barely made it out alive. While out in the forest, Fitzgerald begins digging a grave for Glass, thinking he won't survive for long. One day, as Hawk and Bridger are away, Fitzgerald accuses Glass of endangering his son's life by slowing him down. He then tries to smother him, but is discovered by Hawk just in time. Enraged, Hawk attacks him and tries to kill him. As they argue with each other, Fitzgerald fears Hawk's loud reaction might alert Bridger, who's gone in search of water. So he stabs him right in front of Glass, who is helpless to do anything except watch his son bleed to death. Upon his return, Bridger asks about Hawk, but Fitzgerald denies knowing anything about it, pretending that he disappeared. Glass tries to tell him the truth, but he cannot understand what he's trying to say. The next day, Fitzgerald wakes Bridger and tells him that the Arikaras are coming towards them and they must escape. Bridger asks about Hawk again as he has still not shown up, but he thinks he has gone elsewhere and they cannot wait for him. Fitzgerald also suggests leaving Glass behind, but Bridger refuses, reminding him they promised the captain to give him a proper burial. On hearing this, Fitzgerald buries Glass alive from the neck down. In spite of his protests, Bridger ends up leaving with Fitzgerald, apologizing to Glass and leaving him his spiral-engraved canteen. Meanwhile, the captain and his trappers continue making their way to Fort Kiowa. After some time, Glass manages to crawl out from his grave and finds Hawk's dead body nearby. He mourns his son's death and vows to take revenge for his son's murder. Elsewhere, Bridger becomes suspicious of Fitzgerald and asks him about the attack, to which he confesses to lying about. Bridger gets angry with him and regrets leaving Glass and Hawk. He pulls out his gun, but Fitzgerald quickly takes him down and urges him to think about himself instead of those left behind. After sleeping next to Hawk's dead body, Glass sadly leaves him in the forest and starts crawling forward. He cauterizes his wounds with a hot knife and rests by a riverbank while the Arakawa starts searching for him after finding his belongings near Hawk's body. After spending the night under a cliff and feeding on a bird he hunted, Glass spots the Arakawa but escapes just in time by jumping into the rapids. On their journey, Fitzgerald and Bridger come across a slaughtered village where Bridger finds a female survivor and secretly leaves some food for her without telling Fitzgerald, as he fears he might kill her. At night, Bridger shares that he still thinks about whether they did the right thing by leaving Glass behind, but Fitzgerald assures him it was the best thing to do for their own survival, and if they had not done it, it might have led them into serious trouble as he was holding them back. Meanwhile, Glass safely makes it out of the river and continues his journey through the wilderness. He comes across a Pawnee refugee, Hickok, who initially perceives him as a threat, but changes his mind after Glass begs him for food. As Glass tells him about his injuries and Fitzgerald's betrayal, Hickok comforts him by saying revenge is in the Creator's hands. They bond with each other as Hickok shares meat with him before carrying him on his horse. Back with Fitzgerald and Bridger, they finally arrive at the fort and tell Henry about Glass's death and Hawk's disappearance. When Henry presents their prize money, Bridger refuses to take it, but Fitzgerald satisfies him by explaining that he too is upset for not being able to help Glass. Back in the forest, Glass and Hickok face a snowstorm. After learning about his injuries, Hickok builds a shelter for him and nurses him until he has recovered. Upon waking up the next day, Glass finds Hickok has been hanged by French hunters. While infiltrating their camp, he spots their leader raping Pogoa and saves her by attacking him. After she stabs him in revenge, Glass shoots a few hunters and forces the others to leave, losing his canteen in the fight. Things get worse the next morning when he's attacked by the Arakawa and faces a horrific accident as his horse is driven off a cliff. Surviving the fall, Glass cuts open his horse to take refuge inside its carcass in order to make it through the stormy night. As he wakes up the next morning in the freezing cold, his intense struggle to survive affirms his plans to kill Fitzgerald, the man responsible for his misery. Meanwhile, a French survivor arrives at the fort and requests Henry let him stay with them. After he is taken inside, he tells them about the attack from an unknown man who killed many of his friends. As he offers his belongings as compensation for his stay, Bridger spots his canteen among the belongings and questions him about it. Although he cannot tell them about the owner of the canteen, Fitzgerald realizes it must be Glass. After questioning him about the location of their camp, Henry organizes a search party for Hawk and Glass, while Fitzgerald worries his lies will soon be revealed. The search begins, and they find severely exhausted Glass instead of Hawk. As Henry rushes to help, he tells him about Fitzgerald. After returning to the fort, Henry searches for Fitzgerald, but soon discovers that he has left the camp after stealing all the money for his safe. When the men return with Glass, Henry beats Bridger for lying to him and siding with Fitzgerald in his cruel plan. Bridger tries to clarify his position, but no one believes him. After having his wounds treated, Glass confirms that Bridger is telling the truth and was not present when Fitzgerald killed Hawk. He reveals that Fitzgerald deceived him as well and forced him to follow his orders, so he had no choice but to comply. During the conversation, Henry reveals that Fitzgerald has escaped the fort. Glass decides to go after him, but Henry asks him to wait until his injuries get better. He is worried about Glass's health, but Glass only cares about revenge. While talking, Glass tells Henry that his son was the only thing keeping him alive after his wife's death. Now he has nothing to lose, so he is no longer afraid of dying, simply wanting to teach Fitzgerald a lesson for what he did to them. Henry thinks they will easily find him even if they start chasing him later, but Glass reveals Fitzgerald is afraid of him and will try to go as far as possible, so they must start searching for him as soon as they can. Henry eventually agrees to accompany Glass, and they leave the fort to find Fitzgerald. As they stop for the night, Henry shares his concern that since he's always away from them, his family will have forgotten about him. He then asks Glass about the attack on their village, in which he killed an officer, but Glass replies that he did it to save his son's life, as the officer was trying to kill him. The next morning, they decide to split up, thinking they can cover more area that way. Henry soon finds Fitzgerald, who criticizes him for prioritizing Glass over everybody else. Henry says he intends to take him back to the fort, where he will be punished for killing Hawk. But before he can attempt to capture Fitzgerald, he shoots him dead. Glass hears the gunshot and rushes to help, only to find Henry's corpse, with Fitzgerald having already disappeared again. Glass takes Henry's body with him and uses it as a shield to save himself from the attacks. When Fitzgerald realizes it, Glass shoots him in the arm, but he walks away. After hunting each other, the two meet by the riverbank, where Glass confronts him about Hawk's death. They engage in a brutal fight in which Glass overpowers him after stabbing him in the stomach. He is about to kill him, but then spots the Araucarians on the other side of the river. He remembers Hickok's words and pushes Fitzgerald to their side, where he is killed by their leader. As they have found Pogoa, the girl who Glass saved earlier, they spare Glass and leave without saying anything to him. With a sigh of relief over having taken his revenge on Fitzgerald, Glass sees his wife's spirit and takes a deep breath as she walks away. That was all from the video. Subscribe for more content like this and leave a like to help the channel out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Take care.